Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about utility knives and tape measures. We'd like to thank Sonia Crosby for liking and sharing our podcast.
What are we going to start with?
Start with utility knives, and there's three main styles: retractable, a fixed blade, and folding.
And what are they used for?
So, well, a lot of things. So you can cut through fertilizer bags, ice melt, use them for wallpaper, boxes, cutting through tape, roofing.
So for cutting?
Yes, knives are good. Knives are good for cutting stuff, Cindy.
You're just going to list a bunch of materials. You can cut through garbage bags.
I got more than that. Insulation, drywall.
Jeez.
So the retractable utility knife is probably the most traditional type, and it's tubular in shape, about 6 inches long. It's a fairly thick body, so you really get a nice grip. In fact, most professionals seem to really like this on a lot of the sites I went to. And you can retract the blade. It locks inside the body, so it's real safe if you're putting it into your pocket, and then you can extend it. Your better quality utility knives are going to have 2 or 3 different settings, so the blade tip can come out at different lengths. And generally 1 inch, 5/8, and 3/8 are the different lengths that you can stop it and lock it in place, which is nice because now you can control the depth of your cut depending on what you're going into.
So if you were going to cut open a fertilizer bag, what depth would that be?
I would go 1 inch. I'm carefree when I'm using my utility knives.
That's nice.
And then most of the retractable knives are going to allow you to store the extra blades inside the body. In the older style, you always had to unscrew the screw and then open up the 2 sides of the body to get to the extra blade, and then to replace it, you had to pull the old blade off and actually put it on that slider mechanism. And that would generally pop out, and you'd have to put it back into its sleeve. But the better utility knives, and most knives now, you're going to see that they have a storage area that opens up on the body, so you don't have to take the thing apart. What I like in a utility knife like this is something where the extra blades are held in place with either a clip or a magnet, so they're not bouncing around inside the body of it. And then I would look for a knife with a button release for the blade exchange. So with a utility knife like this, you can extend the old blade. Let's say we've used it and now we want to change it. So the first thing you do is you would flip it around. So these utility knives are nice because, first off, they're always going to stay sharp, because when they start to get dull, you would replace them and you never have to sharpen it like a regular knife if we're using like a pocket knife. And with these utility knife blades, we're going to use 1/2 of it for our cutting, and then we're going to flip it around and use the other half, so you're going to get, 2 blades out of one, basically.
I never really thought about that before.
And I really like the newer styles where they have a button, usually on the side at the front of the utility knife. You press that in, your blade is extended. Now you can grab the blade, pull it out, flip it around, press the button in, and lock it in. So very easy to exchange the blade.
You know what you should use with this?
What?
Cut resistant.
There's nothing better than cut-resistant work gloves. And I like the ones that are like a Kevlar, and I like the latex.
Because they're 5 times stronger than steel.
Yes, Kevlar fibers are 5 times strong. Very dexterous, you can really grab, and for your cutting, I'm telling you, it is just a fantastic type of glove to have.
In case our podcast listeners don't watch our YouTube channel, we've done like 1 million work glove videos recently.
I really like the work gloves.
So painful to sit there
to listen to me talk about work gloves over and over.
All the takes that it takes, Oh, man, holy cow.
You know what's an interesting feature with some of these utility knives is they have a wire stripping notch just behind the front of the blade on the bottom of the knife, and so it uses the back of the blade. So rather than flipping around, it's actually using that back part. And it's also good for string, like if you're cutting string. So but not all of them have it. So it's just something else to look for. And then if you're looking for a very safe utility knife, they have self-retracting utility knives.
So what does that mean?
You take your thumb slide and you push out the blade, and while you're holding the blade out with your thumb, so it's spring-loaded, so if you let go of your thumb, the blade snaps back in. So you extend the blade, you push it onto whatever surface you're cutting, and then you cut, and as you pull away from the surface, it immediately withdraws the blade. So you never have that blade around. Most people don't like this. It's a little more awkward to use.
And is this the one that goes by pressure?
Yes.
So you'd have to have consistent pressure.
Right, exactly. Otherwise it pops right back in the body.
When you're purchasing a new utility knife, make sure you pick it up, you feel it, you hold it, because there's a lot of different sizes, there's a lot of different shapes. They're not just, a straight little utility knife anymore. Right. They're curved, they're bigger. Like my dad he still has the same utility knife, stainless steel. It's really short. Sucker's really heavy, but I mean, it's completely different to what's available now.
Right. And some of them have really nice rubber grips. So if you're sweaty, you're working hard, it doesn't slide in your hand.
And some of them are really heavy. Some of them are very light.
Right.
So see what you like before you purchase it.
Absolutely.
What's the difference between a utility knife and a box cutter?
Same thing.
So they're the exact same thing?
Exact same thing.
Like what are like the little orange, orange knives with the retractable blade that everybody calls just a box cutter?
Like the snap blades?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those have a blade that each section, so it's segmented, so there's a little ridge or multiple ridges, and as that edge or that tip gets dull, most of them will have some type of cap where you can put it onto the end of the blade and then snap off the end,
right?
And then you're going to throw out that small section. And with these, if you're doing those snap blades where you're constantly snapping off sections, or if you're replacing your utility blades, I would wrap those in duct tape and throw them out, or electrical tape.
Not just throw them in the garbage bag?
Right, exactly. So that's a tip. But those are handy. Most people don't like them, especially if you're doing drywall projects or, some of the basic home repair project. They snap very easy. They dull very fast, where utility knives are really going to do a lot of projects without having to replace it. Another main type of utility knives are folding utility knives. So the front half of the knife is going to fold into the handle. So most of these are going to be half the size once they're folded compared to, and thinner. If you don't have onboard storage of extra blades, they're going to be much thinner. So these are very handy to carry around in your pocket if you're doing projects, if you're running up and down ladders. Because one of the problems with a retractable blade is if you using your thumb slide and you don't quite get it all the way into the body, the blade, and now you shove this into your pocket, it can be a problem. And what's nice about these...
Because it cuts.
These folding utility knives is it's either open or it's closed. And when it's closed, it's protected. Some of them have locks that lock it in place. Some either have a push-button lock or a slide lock.
I can never get them open. I can get them open. I can flip it with my thumb, get it open. No problem. We were doing this last night.
Right.
You having a problem getting it open. I had no problem getting it open. I have a problem getting them closed.
One of my favorite folding utility knives, it has a button on the side. So when you press the button, you can flip it. So it snaps open, and when you release that, it locks in the open.
It's very dramatic.
And then to close it, you push the button and you just snap it closed.
That I have no problem with.
And then it locks in place.
It's the one where you have to move it, the hinge?
Well, then there's another style that's spring-assisted. So it closes in, and then you have a little slide button to lock it closed. But when you release it, you use your thumb to give it pressure, and then that spring helps snap it open, and then it locks open.
I almost cut off my finger yesterday.
And then inside the body, there's a piece of metal that you have to push over with your thumb, and then you grab the top half of the blade and fold it and snap it closed.
Without cutting off your fingers.
Right, yeah. You can also get a folding utility knife that's retractable.
No way.
So in the open position, you can use a thumb slide. So if you just want it open and laying around for a project, you don't have to keep folding it open and closed.
Right.
You snap it open, and then you can use the thumb slide to get the blade in and out. So I've got one from Klein that not only is it folding and retractable, but it's auto-loading to replace the blade.
What does that mean?
It's pretty cool. So you load a couple of blades into the body, the front of the utility knife, and as your blade gets dull, you press this button on the side, you pull out the old blade, you take that retractable slide, you slide it all the way back in, and a new blade pops right in, and then you can slide it out. So it's really cool.
It's magical.
Then you have fixed blade, non-folding. So these are utility knives where the blade is always out and they can't be retracted. They're great for rough work where the sliding mechanism on a retractable blade, sometimes you can damage that or break it. And so with these, they're solid. You could really apply a ton of pressure. Let's say you're working with cement board or you're cutting through hard objects. The problem is putting them into your toolbox or your bag. The blade is always out. And one statistic from the Safety Daily Advisor reported that 1/3 of all manual tool injuries are from utility knives. So, a folding type or a retractable is going to be safer, and like the folding ones are much easier to carry. And most of the folding utility knives are going to have a clip on the side, so it's very easy to clip it onto your pocket or a belt, or if you're putting it onto the pouch of, let's say, a tool bag.
Or your shirt or your hat.
Am I listening to anything?
Yes, always. When you're purchasing replacement blades, are they all the same size no matter what manufacturer?
Yeah, they're pretty much uniform now. And 10 years ago and longer, a lot of the blades were different, especially those two little notches on the top of the blade would not fit all manufacturers. And now I haven't seen a problem, so most will fit, unless you have an old utility knife.
Like my dad?
Right. He might have a problem, but most of them are pretty universal now. And there's a variety of blades. You have general purpose, you have drywall, and these are designed to be tougher because when you're cutting through drywall or cement board, it's very abrasive. That gypsum is abrasive. And then you have heavy duty. So you need to look at your packaging, think about the projects. If you get heavy duty, you're probably covered. And these are usually oiled up, so a lot of times, people freak out when they open a bag and they're greasy, and they oil up the blades so that to prevent rust. And you're going to have, a basic style, and then the other popular style is going to be a hooked blade. So on each side it has, like a C-shaped hook, and this is really for roofing, linoleum, and carpet. And what's wild about the hooked blades is you can actually sharpen them.
Really?
They're designed to be sharpened, yeah.
When you're buying a replacement blade, you could just buy a single blade. They come in 10 packs, 50 packs. If you want them for life, 100 pack.
And very convenient. You buy one of those 50 packs. They come in a little plastic case. Some of them are spring loaded, so it's very easy to grab the next blade. So if you're in the middle of a big project, you don't have to run out to the store to get new blades.
You just have to remember where you put them.
Right.
What are some top-rated utility knives?
So Milwaukee, Klein Tools, Irwin Tools, Gerber, DeWalt, and Bessey. That's Bessey. They were all rated very high. And the Milwaukee Fastback Flip Open utility knife, a lot of the contractors on their forums rated that very high. And then I was looking at a couple of the electrical forums, and Klein Tools has a folding, locking electrician's pocket knife. So it has 3 wire stripping notches and the stainless steel blade. And, a bunch of the guys were raving this. And so this is more like a typical pocket knife, so you'd have to sharpen it. It doesn't have replaceable blades, but it was rated very high.
Are we going to talk about tape measures?
You know what archaeologists found? And
a lot of old things?
Dated to about 2000 BC, were notched rods that they believed they were using to measure things.
Where?
In ancient Egypt, of course.
The reed baskets.
And then Romans used marked strips of leather for measuring. It wasn't until 1868 that Alvin Fellows got the first U.S. patent for a round spring-operated measuring tape. You know who really did a good job of measuring?
No.
I was reading some Pliny the Elder,
of course,
and he was writing about Eratosthenes, and this was about 200 BC, and he was measuring the Earth's circumference.
Really?
So he estimates, using shadows, he knew that this one city, when the sun was directly overhead, that there was no shadow. So they figured that it was the sun's rays were directly coming down. So he measured the distance from this town to Alexandria, and he figured out by using the shadow and measuring the length that the circumference of the Earth would be about 29,000 miles. And so in 2015, using modern technology, they just estimated that the circumference is 24,901. So this is 200 BC.
Wow.
Amazing how accurate he was just from math
well, and
tape measures. So the most common type of tape measure you'll be using around the house is made of flexible steel, and that's going to have some type of protective coating on it to keep the markings from scratching off. And this tape is going to be spring-loaded into the body of the tape measure. So some are auto-locking. So as you pull your tape out, it just locks as far out as you pull it, and it stays at that length. And then you press some type of button or a slide to release it. And then the other type of tape, you pull it out, but you have to press the button to lock it in place.
Right.
And then the end of this tape, you're going to have some type of hook. So they either call it a tab or a hook or a tang. And
a tang?
Tang, T-A-N-G.
Have you ever called it a tang?
I've never called it a tang. I always call it a hook. And it can be either a single hook, so it's just coming straight down at 90 degrees, or it can be a double hook where it's going up and down. So some tapes have measurements on the top of the tape and then also on the bottom, which is really convenient depending on what you're doing, because the tape itself is cup shaped.
Right.
So that it stands out and kind of holds its shape. And so, when you're measuring something, sometimes that little cup, it's hard to see exactly the markings. So generally you have to tilt the tape so that the exact mark on the tape is with the surface that you're marking. But if you flip it over, depending on your tape, then it's very easy to use. On the hook, there's usually going to be...
On the tangs?
On the tang, there's going to be a slot. And that slot you can use if, let's say you're doing a project by yourself, you can put a nail or a screw in the surface of the material, and you can hook that little slot onto your screw, let's say, and now, you don't have to have a helper hold it as you pull this out. And then on the bottom of that hook, some of them are serrated, and this is designed so, and I forgot, when you're using that little slit in there, you can also make circular marks. So you can put your screw on a surface, you can hook the end of the hook onto that with that slot, and then you can create a circle by just pulling it tight on that. And then on the bottom of that hook, some are serrated, and you can use that to mark wood or a wall. So let's say you pull your tape out and you know your measurement, you just apply pressure and the hook is going to mark it. And then some will have a V shape on the bottom of that hook. And let's say that you're going onto a very thin surface, or you put a nail on the side of something, you can rest that hook in that V shape, and it's going to hold the tip in place. And some hooks are magnetic tips, so they either have magnets or they're magnetized, and very popular with electricians. I was reading a couple of the forums. The one complaint they had was it attracts a lot of debris, like little metal shavings, and a couple of guys said when they're working on projects in kitchens, it sticks itself to the refrigerator and the dishwasher. Yeah, so think about it. A lot of guys don't like the magnetic tips just because they can kind of be annoying.
Are you only going to talk about the tabs or the tangs on the end of a tape measure?
No, but it's interesting that there's a lot of features on that. Who knew?
Nobody.
So one other thing you want to think about with your tape is how far it stands out. So how far you can extend it before it flexes or it just bends, it just hangs limp. If you get a wider tape, so if you have a tape measure that has 1 inch wide to 1.25 inches, it has the best standout. I was looking at most of the professionals, they're saying that they really like a standout of 7 to 8 feet for most of their projects.
Interesting.
The Stanley Fat Max Extreme was rated one of the best for their standout, so they claim it'll stay 13 feet before it droops.
Wow.
With smaller tapes, so I had my dad got me a Craftsman tape measure. It was a 12-foot with just a small 1/2-inch tape, and it has no standout.
Right,
it just droops. But it was very handy for small projects, and I've had that forever. But one of the things you have to think about when you're buying a tape measure, these small, thin tapes, they bend, they kink easy, because that one, the end now is like all cracked and kinked, and actually all the numbers and the marks are worn off because every time I draw it in, it scratches, you get debris on there.
So why do you still have it?
Well, it's a favorite. It's a hand-me-down. So
it's now your antique.
Yes. The most common size blade is probably going to be from 3/4 of an inch to 1.25 inches. One tip with tape measures is if you're measuring an inside measurement, so let's say we're talking about in our window shade episode, if you're doing, let's say, an inside mount for a window, so you're measuring between the frame of a window, rather than putting your tape on the end and then trying to flex and bend your tape and get that, because your tape is never going to bend at a 90 degree.
Right.
And if you try to bend it, you're going to crack it. So you have that soft bend, you're kind of guessing. What you can do is you can take the body of the tape, and most of them are designed so that they set flat, and you're going to use the body of the tape and put it against the inside frame and then extend your tape. And on the body of your tape measure, it's going to give you a measurement. Usually they're around 3 inches. So it's either going to say 3 inches or 3 1/8 or 3 1/2. And so now you pull out your tape and you look at where it ends. So you're going to see the measurement, and then you're just going to add whatever the width of your tape measure is.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so very easy to measure. And I would really, for me personally, I like a body that's exactly 3 inches, because once you get into 3 1/8, it gets complicated. And then also, a lot of people ask, why does the tip or the hook, why does it move a little bit? And so it's the tip or the hook is held in place with a couple small rivets. When you're, let's say, doing an inside measurement like this, the width of that hook is 1/16 of an inch. And so what that does is it actually moves 1/16 of an inch. And so you can do an inside measurement or an outside measurement. For tape measures in the U.S., they're going to be marked with inches and feet. Did you know? Did you? Hey, well, the rest of the world. Did you know that the U.S., Liberia, and Burma are the only 3 countries in the world that don't use metric?
Yes, I did know that.
It's insane, isn't it? So most are going to be marked with 1/16 of an inch. If you get a contractor type tape, they're going to have 30 seconds marked on it. But in general, most of your 16-foot, 25-foot, 30-foot tape measures are going to be marked in 1/16 of an inch. And each inch is going to have a long, solid line and marked with a number. And then you're going to have half, quarter, eighth, and 1/16 all marked. And they're going to have varying depths of those marks. So it's easy to read. So your half is going to be the longest, and then your quarters, all the quarters are going to be just slightly smaller. The eighths are going to be all slightly smaller than that, and then all of the 1/16 are going to be the smallest. So on the tape, when you're reading it, from 0 to 1 foot, you're just going to have your inches marked, and then all your little marks for the separations between that. And then after 1 foot, you're going to have 2 ways to read it. So it's going to be 1 foot, and then usually on the top of the tape, it's going to have each inch after 1 foot. So it's going to be 1 foot, and then you're going to see in one color, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then underneath that, it's going to have the total amount of inches. So for example, at 2 feet 1, underneath that, it's going to say 25, so for 25 inches. And then at 2 feet 2, underneath that, it's going to say 26 inches.
Right.
Does that make any sense at all?
Kind of.
So it's going to be a quick way to read it. So you can see that it's, 3 foot 1 inch and a half. So it's very easy to read. Instead of trying to read, 74 inches, they break it into both measurements for you.
Because we don't want to do math.
Right. And then some tapes have all the fractions marked for easy reading. So it'll say eighth, it'll be marked eighth, quarter, 3/8, half, 5/8. So it'll have all those fractions. If you don't want to take the time to really analyze all these little hash marks, then you can buy a tape measure that has it marked for you.
Will it say it on the package?
It should. Some of them do. And then like that Johnson Plan Reader, they were really rated high for being the easiest to read. Then on your tape, you're going to see every 16 inches, it's either going to be marked with a different color number, or there's going to be a shape, some type of symbol saying that every 16 inches, these are your markings for your studs in walls. And then many tape measures are going to be marked with a symbol every 19.2 inches for roofing trusses.
What is a truss? Are you going to explain it?
So in the old days, to hold up your roof, you would build rafters. So they took 2x8s or 2x10s, and they tied them together on a main ridge board at the top, so almost like an A shape. And then with trusses, these are small engineered framing. So you've got that same kind of A shape, but in between that, you've got additional pieces of wood, and it's all tied together with brackets. And they're using very small lumber, so 2x4s, 2x6s, but it's all one piece that they just put in place and tie that together. So a lot cheaper. In fact, more than 75% of the homes now are built with trusses. A good trick for figuring out half of the measurement you've made? So you can
divide?
So that would be good. Or you could take the measurement, and let's say it's 3.5 feet. You can fold your tape over so that the hook, the end of it, is right at 3.5, and then that loop where it's exactly half, it's going to show you exactly what half is.
Or you could divide.
And then another tip, when you're making marks, if you're making very exact marks, like when we cut out your countertop to fit it in into the wall there, and we need it to be very precise, when you're making your measurement, you just don't want to make a little...
Why did we need to be very precise? Because when you did the first measurement, it wasn't right?
It was off just slightly, about a half an inch.
That was fun.
I forgot that little bit of an indent against your wall.
Yeah, who saw some of that wall?
I measured the front edge really nice.
Yeah,
it was the
there's-
back edge that was a problem. But the way you'd want to measure so that you're cutting exactly is you don't want to just make a little line or hash marks, because sometimes when you lay down your straight edge, you don't know exactly where that's at if your line comes at an angle. So the best way to mark it is whatever the mark is on your tape, put your pencil right at that point, come out at like a 45-degree angle, then come back to that mark with your pencil, and then go the other direction at like a 45-degree angle. And that little V shape, the tip of that V is going to be exactly where your mark is. And that's the best way to get a very accurate measurement.
What size tape measures would you recommend?
I think a 25-footer, if you're doing a lot of home repair projects, 25-footer is going to handle most of your projects, whether you're having a small home, a larger home. If you're just doing small crafts and things, then a 12-foot tape measure is great. It's lightweight, it's easy to manipulate.
You could buy a combo kit, too, that has both of them in it.
Yeah, nice. Smart. When they're on sale, grab something like that.
What are some top-rated companies for tape measures?
So Stanley, Milwaukee, Lufkin, Lufkin, Tajima, Tajima, the Johnson Plan Reader, and that's easy to read, and Klein. And then I always liked the Craftsman. Again, my dad used to always buy me Craftsman. Like every Christmas, I'd get something new. I still have like that 12-foot one that is just ancient. All the labels torn off, and I mean, it's just beat up. But Craftsman no longer makes tape measures.
You're kidding.
Interesting, huh? And then I like the Magno Grip.
So do I.
we picked that up at one of the shows, and it has these crazy strong magnets that you can just slap it onto everything. So I've got the 25-footer, and what's nice is it has the measurements on both sides. So it has on the top and the bottom. The magnets are great. It has a clip that you can just put anywhere. And then the Stanley Powerlock tape. Did you know that they took that on the Apollo 11 lunar landing mission?
Well, doesn't everybody know that?
So that's got to be a favorite.
Do you have anything else to add?
I would say with utility knives, retractable and folding are the safest. The problem with retractable, though, they can get fouled up with debris over time. That mechanism can jam, so the folding are pretty easy. I would have a few extra blades always when I start a project. And then with tape measures, I would have a 12-foot and a 25-foot tape measure, and that's going to cover most of your projects.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can download our book, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can check out our YouTube videos on our YouTube channel on YouTube. And our
And what's
channel's
it called?
Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.